It's over to you now, Ronan.
Lovely. Welcome everybody to this webinar today. It is in regards Kingspan pollution prevention and remote monitoring solutions. Any questions or queries that you may have, if you want to come back to the team, then we have a dedicated technical inbox that you can reach out to us on, which is fmservices@kingspan.com. So that's fmservices@kingspan.com. So my name is Ronan Rocks and I work within commercial sales in Kingspan Water and Energy. And this presentation and webinar has a duration of approximately 1 hour. So the learning outcomes from today's webinar will be that this is an overview of the touch points that we'll come through in the presentation. So initially we will do a bit about Kingspan, then driving pollution prevention across the FM sector, FM elements in regards to wastewater, fats, oils and grease, which is fog, and tank maintenance and monitoring. Then some legislation and drivers around them items and remote monitoring solutions, and then some benefits and functionality around the remote monitoring, and then some case studies to support that. So just a quick run through and some background information around who we are as Kingspan. So the Kingspan Group has 4.6 billion revenue in 2020, has a presence in more than 80 countries with over 100 factories globally. There are 5 divisions in total and 13,500 employees. So our headquarters is based in Ireland, and the 5 divisions there that we would have under the Kingspan Group would be Kingspan Insulated Panels, Kingspan Insulation, Kingspan Light and Air, Kingspan Data and Flooring, and Kingspan Water and Energy, which I'd say at the start there is the division that we represent and cover off in this presentation. So proactive pollution prevention across the FM sector. Sort of mentioned at the start that it's around groundwater and pollution, and we see a few key areas that need particular attention, and again, you know, to have a proactive approach to managing that. Wastewater management would come in the form of sewage management, grease separation tanks, and surface water runoff systems, along with energy storage tanks in the form of fuel dispensing or holding tanks. There would be various reasons that exemplify the importance of pollution prevention. The main one would be the avoidance of any legal prosecution. Through the implementation of the proactive approaches, an organisation eliminates the possibility of prosecution by the environmental agency or any other regulatory bodies. So by remaining aware of environmental practices and actively looking for opportunities to improve environmental performance, organisations should have knowledge and understanding of its legal compliance and awareness of potential legislative changes. Legislative requirements is the core theme throughout the webinar. So again, the key areas would be wastewater management, tank cleaning and maintenance, monitoring and management via remote technologies. So if we just start off with the wastewater management, to break that down, we see and feel that is a key part of a business that requires proactive approaches in regards to its wastewater systems connected up. It's the simplest form. In its simplest form, wastewater is water that has been used and must be treated before it's released into another body of water, so that it doesn't cause further pollution to other water sources. Wastewater comes from a variety of sources. Basically, everything that you flush down through your toilet or facilities or rinse down the drain is wastewater. Rainwater and runoff, along with various pollutants, surface water, go down street gullies and eventually end up at a wastewater treatment facility. So it's a matter of caring for our environment and for our own health. There are a lot of good reasons why we keep our water clean, and it's an important priority. So just some of the key areas that this would be in relation to. So the likes of fisheries, where clean water is critical to plants and animals that live in the water. Obviously, key in the fishing industry. Wildlife habitats, our rivers and oceans, waters, teem with life that depends on the clean water. There are critical habitats of hundreds of species of fish and other aquatic life. Then also a key one for ourselves would be recreation and the quality of life. Water, can be a great playground for us all. The scenic and recreation values of our waters are reasons why many people choose to live where they do, and visitors are drawn to water activities such as swimming, fishing, boating, etc. So yeah, key areas there. Health concerns, obviously if water is not properly cleaned, it can carry disease, which spreads very quickly. And since we live, work and play so close to water, harmful bacteria has to be removed to make the water safe. So an example of that would be a rotating biological contactor, which is an RBC, it's a sewage treatment system that would have rotating discs inside it that basically treat the inflow, and then when the outflow is discharged, it's to a certain standard that is allowed to be discharged into water courses safely. And these can be used across the UK and Republic of Ireland. So major aim of any wastewater management is to create a safe environment by ensuring all systems are non-polluting, have a fully compliant and trusted wastewater system suited to the specification of the building needs, and also to ensure that systems are maintained regularly and operating optimally, reducing serious health hazards as well as local pollution risks. That will be a key component where, if you've implemented a new system and invested heavily in it, then it would be foolish to let that sit by the wayside and not have any maintenance on it, purely because when you do encounter problems, they tend to be high revenue to rectify, and you tend to have a domino effect that if one part fails, you may have another, purely because they have had poor maintenance. So it's key to have a regularly maintained system to keep it operating optimally. So with that, managing your wastewater system effectively will help certify you're meeting local legislative requirements regarding performance and environmental impact. So just on that legislation, as I said, it can be the key drivers in this. So legislation around wastewater products. You have Part H 2010 with BSEN 12566 that states regular emptying and maintenance of treatment plants must be completed at least once a year. And then you have similar requirements for fuel oil and oil separators, and again, wastewater treatment plants. So in each country, there are different agencies that implement this legislation. So you would have the Environmental Agency, predominantly in England, and that is an executive non-departmental public body sponsored by the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Then within Northern Ireland Environmental Agency, it is an executive agency within the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. The Scottish Environmental Protection Agency is non-departmental public body of the Scottish Government. And then we have Natural Resources Wales, which is a Welsh government-sponsored body taking over the functions of the Countryside Council for Wales, Forestry Commission Wales, and the Environmental Agency in Wales, as well as certain Welsh government functions. So Part H 2002 Building Regulations provides guidance on how to meet the building regulations in relation to drainage and waste disposal. Contains guidance on foul and surface water drainage. So in summary, it aims to protect health by preventing contamination of underground water, water courses and supply, and the businesses face risk of prosecution if their choice of private sewage treatment is harmful to the environment. And again, some of the impacts in that can be, that if you have a system, if there's a power failure, if the system, if it needs desludged or emptied and that's not actioned, the system can back up. Then there's certain alarm functions that can be had there as well for indicating high level. You can have holding tanks. So there are several elements around that side of things. So moving on, certified small wastewater treatment plants up to 50 population equivalent. General binding rules: small sewage discharge to the ground set that your treatment system must meet the right British standard in force at the time of installation. The standards currently in force for the new systems are the BSEN 12566 for septic tanks and small sewage treatment plants, and the BS 6297-2007 for drainage fields. So the BSEN 12566 small wastewater treatment plants, as I said, up to the population equivalent of 50, refers to a set of standards which specify general requirements for packaged and or site assembled wastewater treatment plants used for domestic wastewater treatment. The 2020 septic tank regulations, sewage treatment legislation for both England and Wales changed back on January the 1st, 2020. Amongst those changes, it includes acts on septic tanks that discharge to surface water. They will require either an upgrade or replacement with a sewage treatment plant. Fact being that you will no longer be able to discharge with effluent directly to a watercourse. So that goes back to the RBC that I touched upon, that old style septic tanks need upgraded to current sewage treatment plants, the likes of the RBCs, to be able to meet regulations and legislation to allow you then to discharge safely to a watercourse. You must also check the area where you release your sewage once a month for signs of pollution. And you tend to notice standard signs there that if there was an issue around this, such as the odours, if your sewage isn't draining properly, i.e. pools of water in the area where you're discharging to on your soakaway, or if you, as you releasing sewage and there's an overflow of sludge, a build-up of white scum or foam in the water around the area where you're releasing it, would tend to say that you are having issues, and that's something that should be addressed immediately, as it possibly could lead to a pollution incident. Just moving on, the BSEN 858-2 is the UK. The UK has adopted a two-part European standard. The guidelines laid out by the Environmental Agency state that separators should be serviced at least twice per year, in line with the manufacturer recommendations, which should also include a 5-year integrity check. So what we've mentioned at the start would be sewage treatment plants, then oil separators. So this is in line with that. Separator systems basically are for light liquids such as oil and petrol. The surface water drains typically discharged to a water course or indirectly into underground waters via soakaway. So the contamination of surface water by oil, chemicals or suspended solids can cause these discharges to have a serious impact on the receiving water. The UK environment regulators have all published guidance on surface water disposal, which includes dealing with pollution both at the source and at the point of discharge from site. So it's basically called end of pipe treatment. Oil separators are installed on surface water drainage to protect receiving waters from the pollution of oil, which may present due to minor leaks from vehicles across plant, or from more major events like accidental spillage. Separator standards and types of the UK has adopted the two-part standard that I had previously mentioned for the design, use, selection, install, operation and maintenance of prefabricated oil separators. and new prefabricated separators should comply with the standard. So that's sewage treatment plants and oil separators covered off. So the next one we would touch upon would be food waste and grease management. So grease management refers to the use of products and systems which effectively remove fats, oils and grease from wastewater, and so prevent the issues which fog can cause in a kitchen's drainage system and the wider sewage network. So with that, there are approximately 366,000 sewage blockages throughout the year, every year. And it's estimated around 75% of those are caused by fog. Planning legislation for that will be Part H1 Building Regs, Section 2.2, drainage serving kitchens and commercial hot food premises shall be fitted with a grease separator complying with EN 1825-1 and designed in accordance with EN 1825-2 or other effective means of grease removal. There are similar points made in legislation for the Water Industry Act, Section 111. It's a criminal offence under this section of the Water Industry Act of 1991 to discharge into the public sewers any matter which may interfere with the free flow of wastewater. This has been used to encourage change and, if necessary, force through prosecution. But it's, in that side of things, it's extremely difficult for water companies to gather the evidence of the offence, as in where it's coming from in the lines and who's actually doing the causing the pollution offence. And I say the build up in the lines, it's basically like an artery. Over time, the grease, fats, oils and grease build up and build up and build up, restricting the flow and ultimately cause, fatbergs. And off the back of that, then that can cause severe blockages in the lines, which ultimately leads to facilities backing up and causing massive pollution incidents. Grease separators in their principles of design, performance testing, marking, quality control will be 1825-2004. This standard only refers to one type of grease management equipment, which will be passive traps. Although the standard is referenced in the planning legislation, the standard has not been adopted in the UK, mainly because of the use of marine diesel for testing, which may not recreate exact kitchen conditions, and the lack of independent testing facilities. Currently, there's no standard for the UK grease removal units and biological dosing system. So it would be keeping a proactive approach to pollution prevention through intelligent asset monitoring would also help ensure the kitchens are compliant, as well as preventing rather than reacting to costly issues that poor management of fog can create. Adopting the commercial service into your business will reduce health and safety risks, obviously keep you compliant, avoiding fines, and would limit negative PR. So that's sort of some of the current issues faced with old style grease traps would include odours, continual pump outs, and clean up after overspills. With no monitoring on them, it's hard to know when they need emptied. It can vary in kitchens based on seasonal activity, footfall through the business. In busy times, you may need to empty your unit more, and in lower footfall, then obviously you don't need to empty it as much. So yeah, if you have the unit monitored, it gives you that peace of mind and the trigger to allow you to know when you need to get the unit emptied. So moving on to tank cleaning and maintenance. So to break it down, and what we see is we feel is a key part of business that requires proactive approaches is the fuel energy storage tanks for businesses, organizations and individuals storing oil in their premises, whether for use as fleet fuel or heat to heat and run premises. Compliance with government regulations is vital to ensuring not only the safety to the people and to the environment, but also that they're not fined or prosecuted. So results of an oil leak from tanks can prove costly on a financial and environmental level. Oil is one of the most common reports of pollution, contributing to over 15% of pollution incidents each year. It's very harmful, can harm plants and marine life, damage rivers, groundwater, and soil, and also destroy the natural habitats and drinking water supplies. Different regulations apply depending on where you store your fuel, how much you store, and what you're using the fuel for. If you choose not to comply with these regulations, you can be served an anti-pollution works notice or face prosecution, both obviously being bad news for your operations. So failure to comply with oil storage regulations can mean criminal prosecution and a heavy fine. Examples of that would be control of pollution in oil storage in England, regulations in 2001, the Water Environment Oil Storage in Scotland, regulations 2006, the Control of Pollution Oil Storage regulations in Northern Ireland 2010, and the Guidance on the Water Resources Control of Pollution Oil Storage Wales regulations 2016. All fairly similar and advising monthly and annual checks. Also, you'll see there DEFRA's guidance on the law states that it's recommended that oil storage tanks and ancillary equipment are inspected on an annual basis by an off-tech registered technician. So oil storage checks in the form of bonded within standards dispensing equipment and pipe work leading to and from the tanks. And it's on average 1 minute of downtime can cost a business in an approximate value of in and around £5,000. So it can be very, very costly, but the savings can be had obviously to implement the correct service and maintenance and monitoring over a period of time. Will give you the early warning and help prevent any pollution incidents going forward. Obviously, the environmental impacts of the pollution would be quite severe and worsening as well as populations grow and the demand on water resources become greater. In regards fuel and fuel cleanliness that could be stored in the tank, so you actually have the tank itself that needs to be in good condition for storing the fuel, but the fuel itself over a period of time, if it's left standing and not, it can stagnate. Kind of water ingress, bacteria growth, it creates the environment for the bacteria to grow, which then can lead to, when the bacteria goes through its life cycle and dies, it sinks to the bottom of the tank, causing a heavy sludge build-up over a period of time. If the storage tank is being used solely for like an emergency backup for a generator, if it's sitting for a period of time, the fuel quality starts to drop off, the sludge levels start to build up, water condensation in it as well. And then if in the event when you need your backup generators to kick in, the dirty fuel then goes through the lines into the generator and blocks the generator, so it can be significant. So in regards to cleanliness, there is an ISO 4406-2021, and that's the internationally recognized cleanliness code for measuring the solid particulate content of fuel samples and hydraulic fluid. And it's also referred to as the ISO cleanliness code. And it's made up of 3 numbers that identify the number of particles that are present in 1 milliliter of fuel. So if you take a standard sample of your fuel, the way it would work, take a standard sample of your fuel to give you a benchmark of where you are against the ISO standard, regulation standard. And if you're above that, then it means that your fuel is in good condition. If you're below that, then depending on what level you're at, you could still use the fuel, but it would be recommended to get it cleaned. Level down below would be that you don't use your fuel and it needs cleaned in the foreseeable future. And the last one will be under no circumstances use your fuel, because it'll definitely block your lines and cause damage to generators, and it needs immediate attention. So they're sort of the 3 brackets that it would fall into, but again, it's all based off your baseline fuel sample to tell you where your current condition of your fuel would be. So moving on to remote monitoring. Remote monitoring, physical access, management and monitoring of domestic and commercial assets has always been a challenge. Issues have been highlighted more so in the current climate in our last couple of years during the COVID-19 pandemic, where physical access hit an all-time low. So before COVID-19, government reported that only 5% of the UK population worked from home. During lockdown, this has increased to almost half of all workers, and you will have seen, that was relaxed, but then obviously with the second wave kicking in, it was re-implemented. So much of this would have been impossible without remote technologies. Building and energy facilities managers now able to manage their assets remotely and automatically, eliminating the requirement to gain physical access almost entirely, with all data transmitted wirelessly in real time via a secure network. So you can have someone working from home and still be able to tell whether their assets are fully working on their sites. Even if you're based in the UK and you're traveling and you're in a different country, you'd still be able to get the alerts to see what's happening with your sites, and you get that real-time data through. So very, very important. It's the way that the businesses are moving, and telemetry is a key component. Again, if you have high value assets, then you want a piece of kit on it to be able to tell you that it's being monitored and looked after in the correct way, as opposed to having a resource tied up of someone going around maybe twice a day doing visual inspections. Their time could be better used elsewhere in your business. So the remote monitoring, giving you an automatic notification in the event of an alert, gives you the heads up to put your plan of action that you already would have ready to go, to be able to again get a swift resolution, and that you don't have any downtime or any pollution incidents. So the drivers for remote monitoring solutions would be, I say, the physical access management monitoring of domestic commercial assets has always been a challenge. And again, the issues that's been highlighted through the COVID, through the pandemic, and I touched upon there, the being able to manage your assets remotely. Proactive actions are typically 5 times less costly than reactive ones, and improve levels of protection across your entire assets, which again just touched upon. So the demand for remote monitoring solutions, survey of 166 participants from across the UK found that 91% of professionals believe remote technologies will be widespread in the next 10 years. 66% of participants have already adopted them to some degree, obviously reporting that the pandemic first prompted them to start. Those who had previously adopted pre-COVID used the remote monitor, increase the ease and efficiency of data gathering, save long-term costs and ease of servicing. And the technologies are becoming more commonplace, and their potential for their applications are almost limitless. So again, there's telemetry that can be used to monitor your sewage treatment systems, wastewater applications, your pumping stations, your oil separators, your fats, oils and grease. So yeah, the telemetry there for that to help support service and maintenance plans, allow you to be more efficient around your emptying and tankering costs, by getting the alerts to say when it's specifically needed, as opposed to just having standard like quarterly visits where your unit may not be full and you're getting a certain amount taken out, where you're getting a cost associated with that, where it would be better to wait until the unit's 90% full to give you a 10% window to organize the empty, and then you're being more efficient in your emptying regime, and it's cost efficient as well. So the advantages for remote technology that remote technologies offer would be that it's helps you plan better around your servicing requirements, gives you a cost-effective solution, the data gathering, proactive pollution prevention, helps you avoid reduced costly downtime, and gives you hassle-free compliance reporting. Again, in the commercial world, for sites that are having regular auditing throughout the year in regards ISOs, quality audits, etc., then by being able to say that you have telemetry devices and be able to pull the data together to maybe show that you've had a system that went into alert, then show a report to show that an engineer attended the same day to fix it, and have the full paper trail as such to be able to show that you're correctly looking after your assets and being compliant and tying in with obviously the legislation. So just some of the functionality in remote monitoring, it's fairly self-explanatory. Gives real-time information. You can get instant alerts and emails, or via emails and SMS. The data stored and backed up on a secure cloud database. You're going to get different fault warnings, including high-level alarm, loss of power, motor trip, loss of rotation, and there's multiple other ones that would follow suit. Again, it's depending on what your application would be and what you're looking to monitor in regards to your asset. And then there's remote monitoring via portals and dashboards. If you have national assets, then you can put a telemetry device in each one of them and view them all centrally on a portal or dashboard. So at a glance, you'll be able to see what ones are working fine, what ones are causing an issue that you need to address, and that they're the ones you would focus on to put the plan around. And you'll be able to do all that from, again, in this current climate, you could be sitting at home and you'll be able to, by quickly clicking into your portal, you'll be able to see your full population of assets and what's in a healthy state and what actually needs some action. And the last thing I'll say would be the geolocation enabled, again, ties back to the portal. It identifies each location on the portal, and again, at a glance, you'll be able to see what needs any works. So in regards to telemetry, the case study for it would be a client, BP Fuels, and they had a maintenance and contract manager who had been in touch with Kingspan in regards very similar just to what I touched upon, someone who had a national coverage and was spending quite a bit of significant time. He had a lot of sewage treatment plants and pumping stations over a wide geographic spread. Some of the units were failing and they weren't getting any pre-warning. So we met with Ted and the team to discuss the remote monitoring to be able to help reduce the risk of any pollution incidents. More or less, he was having to spend a lot of time basically on a round robin basis of driving around. So again, physical access to management to monitor commercial assets was always a challenge for Ted. So he felt the need to adopt remote monitoring technology to give him the ease of having access to the data, gathering the data, seeing if there's any trends in the data, if it's any set sites that were causing any issues, to help him in the long term reduce his downtime costs and also give ease of servicing. So Kingspan installed 61 remote monitoring units across 54 of the sites. And again, Ted was given the full access to an online portal, was able instantly to monitor the health of the population of assets, ensuring optimal performance at all times. And one of the key things was, I say trends, being able to see a certain site of constantly, if it's going into alarm on a regular basis at a set time, on a set day, whatever it may be, that might highlight that some properties there, or if it was at a service station as an example, may have had an upgrade and made an additional footfall going through it, and their systems may not have been factored into their wastewater requirements. So off the back of that, obviously with greater footfall and use of the facilities, the unit may have been under a bit more stress. So when you upgrade the overall building, you may need to obviously look at upgrading your sewage management network to be able to support that. And with the use of telemetry, they were able to see certain sites and get the information around that. And as I said, since adopting that, they've already received instant alerts and real-time info across some of the assets. And they've got the issues recognized with their sewage treatment plants and put an immediate action plan around it to upgrade some of them. and that again, prevents any further escalation of problems and expensive costs being incurred. So yeah, through the remote technologies, it's having that ease at your fingertips to be able to check systems over without physically having to get in a car, travel X amount of miles to arrive on a site and get it checked over, or to ring through to get maintenance people to go and spend the time to go and check them over. We've had instances before of sites there where someone has drove around to the site and it had a, a beacon at a kiosk where the alarm panels were, and basically someone had turned it off and put a covering over the beacon. So it was basically a pointless exercise to have a warning beacon, and then someone actually covered it up. And when they were asked why it was covered, they said that because it was flashing all the time, it was a distraction. And the question was asked, well, did you not think of reporting it to someone because it's flashing? It's called a warning beacon. And having remote monitoring would take away that factor, that you're reliant on somebody actually seeing it, reporting it through the right process and chain to allow something to be put into place. And obviously, the remote monitoring, as soon as an alert happens, you get the instant feedback. Whereas if you're waiting on someone on site, they can be distracted to go to do another task, and that goes out of their mind. And also, panels and beacons don't always tend to be in eye line for people. They can be, round the back of a property, not fully visible at all times. So again, having the telemetry and monitoring is a very beneficial aspect in your business, as can be seen through BP Fuels. So it's just between 2019, 2020, you can obviously see the value in fines, quite significant, that were issued by the Environmental Agency. And that just goes to show, that the environmental agencies that I mentioned at the start across England, Scotland, Wales, and in Northern Ireland have strengthened their teams, and they're in the amount of agents they have out doing spot checks and site checks, and making sure that people are compliant. It also is in audit processes, etc. So yeah, the benefits can be seen, that the focus is there from government and legislation and the local councils that tie in line with the environmental agencies to try and obviously reduce that amount of fines, get people more, have an awareness around their responsibility for their wastewater networks and their sewage and their oil separators, for their fats, oils and grease, anything that's discharged into the water courses. So we only have the one, so we have to look after it. And by doing the regular service and emptying and monitoring of the devices and assets, basically in twofold, helps reduce the fines going out in the first place, helps reduce people's prosecutions and the fines that come along with that. So yeah, it's quite a hefty number, and you would want to see that being reduced year on year. So in regards to accreditations, again, when you're talking about facilities management services, you want, a provider that has the accreditations to be able to support that, they follow certain guidelines and adhere to the regulations and can be seen to follow them. So the fact that they're able to practice them themselves, they know exactly and have obtained the accreditations in the first place. It's quite a significant and lengthy process to go through them, quite rigorous, very detailed, and a lot of tick boxes that need to be covered off through that process to get your certifications, just like there at the bottom, the BSIs, the ISOs. So for why you choose a service provider that has them, which shows the quality for projects, and or achieve the preferred supplier status. It probably goes through in the likes of tenders, near enough in every tender document, you would be asked for all your company's ISOs in regards quality management, health and safety, etc. So it demonstrates compliance, demonstrates an effective quality management system, and shows, as I said, that the business follows best international practices and can be trusted. So if a company has, as I said, all invested all the time and effort into getting their accreditations, shows that they run with best practice and know then obviously what is the correct fashion and manner to be able to assist in clients set up and on site. So accreditations will be a key component and highly recommended to look for them for when you're trying to source a service provider. So the learning outcomes from the webinar session would be, as I said, we give an overview about Kingspan. It's about driving pollution prevention across the FM sector to raise awareness that it's just not a straightforward case of having a system and sort of parking the bus on it and leaving it to sit there. Be the same. Best way comparison to put it would be if you buy a high-end car, top of the range car, it's regularly serviced. The people that look after it are the experts in their field. You wouldn't take a high-end car and take it to like a backstreet garage and ask them to fix a Ferrari. So in this instance, it would be very similar. If you've invested in top of the range product, then you would want to follow suit and have the same in regards to the maintenance, emptying, and telemetry side of things. So that would be getting the pollution prevention, and the way around the pollution prevention is regular maintaining of your assets, as well as the monitoring and emptying where needed. And that's across, say, the FM elements of the wastewater that we touched upon, oil separators, fats, oils and grease, and the tank maintenance and remote monitoring, all being driven by legislation. And I say you can see that the water, the environmental agencies and water companies, it's a big thing for them. And as I said, with additional agents out in the field, it's going to be a focus for them in the coming years. So it's best to be compliant with the legislation and have all your service requirements in place. We covered off the drivers for the remote monitoring solutions and the benefits and functionality around that, with a quick case study there of the benefits for a significant company, BP, nationwide, investing into their assets and their resources for managing them, making them more efficient, gathering the real-time data, being able to put plans of action around real-time incidents, reduce their downtime, reduce their spend, and ultimately keeps them compliant in regards to the legislation. So finally, I would just like to thank you for your time and thanks for listening. Again, any queries, or should you want to reach out to speak to anybody in regards to any of the topics covered off in today's webinar, whether it's around servicing requirements, emptying regimes, remote monitoring, the legislations around the pollution prevention, then certainly please contact us at fmservices@kingspan.com. So that's fmservices@kingspan.com. Again, many thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Right, Ronan, good job. I thought that was great.
Geez, I got tongue-tied in the middle and somebody rang my mobile because I hadn't got it in silent. I don't know if that was picked up or not.
I did hear a brief ping, so I think that was on slide 10. I have re-scribbled beside that. Do you want to go back?
I got tongue-tied on one word on that too, and then when my mobile rang, it really threw me, and I sort of made a mess of it.
Well, do you know what? You sounded all right. It was very professional. Do you want to flick back there, and we'll just see slide 10 again, then, just to have it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see where I got stuck. I got stuck on something. What was it? Environment, UK environment regulate. I can't even pronounce it.
Regulate, yeah.
Regulators. UK environment. I'll just put bodies instead because I know I'm gonna. It's one of those ones. It'll be like an earworm. It'll stick in my head, and I'll be here all day. So if I take that
That's a good idea. Find an alternative.
I know. Yeah. Get a thesaurus. I can't even say thesaurus either. Jesus. I need a glass of water. Yeah. So do you want me to we'll run through 10 again then?
Yeah, I think so. Are you able to flick the
Back
presentation
the
back
slide.
there? And we'll just do that one. But I thought all the rest of it was absolutely fine. So
Is it all right?
yeah,
You
good
know better
job.
than me. You see, when you're the person doing it,
And
you
then
sort
walking
of
over the side.
it's nothing worse than you sound to your own voice. That's the worst bit about listening back to these things. You go, geez, do I really sound like that? Kingspan Group, way past it. So there now
The one with BSEN at the top of it. That one there. I think it was that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you tell me when to go.
Grant, okay, I'm gonna mute myself and it's over to you when you're ready. Oh no.
So for the BSEN 858-2, the UK has adopted a two-part European standard. So it's the BSN EN 858-1 and -2. These are the guidelines laid out by the Environmental Agency that state that for oil separators should be serviced at least twice per year in line with manufacturer recommendations. And this should also include a 5-year internal integrity, structural integrity check. So we had covered off sewage treatment plants, and this is now in regards oil separators. So the separators say they can be for light liquids, e.g. oil and petrol. Surface water drains typically discharge to a water course or indirectly into underground waters via soakaway. Contamination of surface water by oil, chemicals, or suspended solids can cause these discharges to have a serious impact on the receiving water. UK environmental bodies have all published guidance on surface water disposal, which includes dealing with pollution both at the source and at the point of discharge from site. So it's so-called end-of-pipe treatment. Oil separators are installed on surface water drainage systems to protect receiving waters from pollution by oil, which may be present due to minor leaks from vehicles or from across the plant, or from more major events like accidental spillage. Separator standards and types. The UK has adopted that the two-part European standard, -1 and -2, as mentioned, for the design, use, selection, installation, operation, and maintenance of prefabricated oil separators. New prefabricated separators should comply with this standard also.